Welcome to this week's Engage with the Page. If you're just joining us for the first time, a little reminder about what Fiona, Ange and I are here to do. Each week we want to share a great picture book with you, not only to introduce you to some fabulous books, but also ones that you can engage in with word inquiry and different word inquiry concepts, but also just helping your children to become word noticers.
And this week is no different. We have another great picture book that we've used in our classes from early years up into fifth graders. It's what we feel is a really lighthearted look at being at school, but it definitely has a deeper message. So this week we bring you We Don't Eat Our Classmates. Where is it? There it is. By Ryan Key Higgins, who's done the illustrations as well as the words.
And so we're going to be focusing this week, just really trying to focus on one area for word inquiry. So we're really going to be looking at structure and sorting out structure, looking at the structure of words, bases, prefixes and suffixes. And we did, we sort of did a little bit of this last week also with our book, You Matter. And I was speaking to a friend yesterday, and they were saying that they actually used that technique of what do you notice? They just put some of the pages up and said, what do you notice? And it turned out to be a really great way to take stock of where the children's understanding is at this point of the year in terms of their, understanding about bases and affixes, looking at different graphemes and the relationship between graphemes and phonemes. So again, that's the sort of thing that you could do with this book as well.
So as Fiona was saying, you could look at many things in this book, but one thing that really stood out to us when we looked at this book was a word in the title. So we don't eat our classmates. And the first thing we saw was that there is a compound word in the title, classmates. And so really what you could do with your children is an inquiry into compound words. So when you have two bases joining together to make one word. So here are a few things that you could look at. You could box the base and underline any affixes. And also you could write word sums with your students so that they can clearly see how the different makeup of compound words.
And a great thing about compound words is also to look at word families, because compound words belong to two families. So if you look through the book, you'll find the word classmates or backpack. The students head out to the playground. Your students will notice these compound words as you go through. There's the goldfish in there, spoiler alert. Students might also notice other words that are in there that you might have a chat about as well.
Yeah, like because is one of the words in the book. And is that actually a compound word? Because we know cause and we know be. So is that a compound word in because? That would be the start of a great conversation.
Mm-hmm. Even the word finger painted. So are they two words or two bases coming together, finger painted with a suffix to make another word?
Well, I think that's actually going to be an interesting part of the conversation with students, Lauren, is can you have a suffix? Because we look at compounds and we would see like backpack or basketball. And I noticed that you already showed there with classmates, you're already showing, oh, we've got class and we've got mate, and actually that S is functioning as a suffix. So I think that would be just a great question with students. When we have two bases in a word, can we have a suffix? And, what sort of structures can we see when we're trying to analyze? Because that's what we're trying to do, is say, we know every word has to have at least one base. And what is the structure of this word? Think about the meaning and then what's the structure?
And then students maybe in that first round have found those words where they can see the meaning in both bases really easily, but they might go back for a second look or in another book and really become word noticers and say, oh, what about sometimes or someone or herself? We use those so often. Do we ever really think of them as having two bases?
Yeah, good point. And actually, I think this story has a few names in there. So then we could start to look at those and wonder, are they compounds when they're names? Which, of course, on a side track will have you starting to look at the students' names in the classroom and see what those names are. But thinking about the names in the book, I know I noticed Mrs. Noodleman and CC Woodman or Woodman. And so there's two names of characters in the book that have man as the second part. Is that a compound word?
Yeah, are names compounds?
Yeah, interesting question.
So the word sandwich is also in that book. I'm wondering if that's a compound word.
Yeah, that's also really interesting, isn't it? Whenever we see sandwich with our children, because the children know about sand and they know about witch. And is this, you know, the witch who is on a broomstick? Is it the witch? Which one are we talking about? The question witch? But when we look at the spelling, it's not spelled either of those ways. And yet we often kind of laugh about sandwiches and, you know, can draw funny pictures of them. So this actually, the sandwich takes us into a bit of etymology, which is always interesting with words. So a little bit of the history of words. I think, do either of you know the story of sandwich and how it got its name?
No.
Or how they got their name, sandwiches. So the story goes that there was an earl, you know, a titled person somewhere in England who loved to gamble. He loved to play cards. And so he was so busy gaming that he didn't have time to stop and have a proper meal. And so he asked for his meal to be brought to the table, bread and meat, and then so that he wouldn't waste time. And so he ended up putting the meat in between the bread, and he could hold it in one hand and then still play his cards in the other hand, and didn't have to stop doing the thing that he loved doing most. And from that, I think that, you know, perhaps he wasn't the first person to do that. I mean, I guess they were already sort of in some ways eating meals a bit like this, but I think that it became popular. So other people would say, you know, I want to have my meal the same as sandwich, the same as he is having his. And then gradually over time, they just called them sandwiches.
So where did he get his name from, this earl?
The area that he was lord of the land in this area is called Sandwich. And I think those two, actually, the two parts of that name, I think one is about sand and one is about harbour. So it's like a sandy harbour, something like that. So I you know, place names come about because they link somehow to something that was in the area, and just as people's family names also often linked to either the profession that they had or where they lived. That's why I think it can be a fun investigation with students to learn a little bit about their names.
For sure.
So we also like to give you a little classroom connection, something that you can do with this book, because we know that we want to read them just to enjoy the books. We know that they all have word inquiry links. This one is especially good for compound words, but it is also a nice time, whether you're starting the school year or you're in the middle of the school year, to think about, what do we want to do with our classmates? If we don't want to eat them, what are some of the things that we could do? And I've used this at the beginning of the year to think about essential agreements. What is it that we agree to do in our classroom in a more lighthearted way to get the conversation started?
Yeah, great idea, Ange. Thanks. This week, we're also including a little Seesaw activity for those of you who are using Seesaw. Just remember that the Seesaw activity can be edited and used, which means you can make it just right for your learners.
Thanks for making that, Lauren.
No worries.
Well, I think that's all from us today.